Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our virtual classroom. Today, we're going to be going over solving addition equations. And today, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be less about finding the answer and more about the process of actually solving equations. A lot of the problems that we're going to be seeing today are problems that you will probably be able to do mentally. You'll probably be able to do these with mental math. However, I don't want you to focus on that. I want you to focus on the actual process. What am I writing? How am I getting to that answer? Because that process will be applied to much harder problems moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, whenever we're talking about solving equations, it really comes down to one goal and one goal only, at least in our class. And that goal is to do something called isolate the variable. As you can see here, isolate the variable. In order to solve equations, we need to isolate the variable. Again, to solve equations, we need to do something called isolate the variable, which begs the question, what does it mean to isolate something? Well, isolate or to isolate or isolating something simply means to have it be all by itself. That's what it means to isolate something. If you are isolated from everybody else, you are by yourself, there's nobody around you. And that is exactly what we need to do today. We want to find an equation and make it so that the variable is all by itself on whatever side of the equation it finds itself. And the best way to explain this is to really start with an example. All right. So let's start with this example right here, ladies and gentlemen. We're given the example 4 plus x is equal to 7. Again, that is 4 plus x is equal to 7. All right. First thing I want you to realize, guys, is that this is an equation. An equation has an equal sign. So this is indeed an equation. And an equation, a lot of times we're used to seeing the equation, the equal sign mean, well, this is the answer, like 4 plus x, the answer is 7. However, that is not really what the equal sign means. What the equal sign tells us is that we have two sides. We have a left side and a right side of the equation. And what the equal sign means, it's telling us that this left side of the equation has the same value as the right side and vice versa. What the equal sign means is that whatever you have on the right side of the equation has the same value as the left side of the equation. It's a lot like a scale, like the ones that we use in science class, perhaps, where if you have two objects or two items on the scale, on the balance, on the scale, and if the scale is balanced, meaning not one side is not teetering more than the other, you know that they have the same weight or the same mass. Same thing right here. So in reading this equation, we are saying that 4 plus x, whatever x is, we don't know what that is at this point, together, that's what addition means, have the same value as 7. Now, I realize that most of you will be able to do this in your head. You will be like, well, if 4 plus 3 equals 7, that is true. That's true. X has to equal 3. But again, I don't want you to focus on the answer. I want us to focus on how are we going to get the answer. Okay, so we're going to start by writing the problem. So here's the problem, 4 plus x is equal to 7. And ladies and gentlemen, in order to solve this equation, we need to isolate the variable. We want the variable to be all by itself. So let's ask ourselves, on which side of the equation do we find the variable? Is it on the left side or the right side of the equation? Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, the variable is on the left side over here. On the left side of the equation, we have 4 plus x. There is the variable. Okay, so for now, we're going to ignore the right side. Okay, we're going to come back to that later. But for now, we're going to ignore it. All right, so is the variable isolated? No, it is not. The variable, the x, is not by itself. Why is it not by itself? Because, or what else do we see there besides the x? We see a plus 4. Meaning, ladies and gentlemen, I need to get rid of the plus 4. I need to get rid of that adding 4. The reason why the x is not by itself is because I'm adding 4 to it. Well, I need to do something that is going to undo that. I need to do something so that I can get rid of adding 4. How am I going to do that? Well, ladies and gentlemen, in order to isolate variables, what you must do to isolate the x is use the inverse operation. We have to use the inverse operation. Well, what is an inverse operation? Well, we can see up here, ladies and gentlemen, an inverse operation is really just the opposite operation. For example, if you have an addition problem, the inverse of addition is subtraction and vice versa. The inverse of subtraction is addition. If you have a multiplication problem, well, the inverse of multiplication is division, and the inverse of division is multiplication. So in order to get rid of something, in order to isolate the variable, I need to do the inverse, the opposite of what is currently happening to it. For example, right here, x is not by itself because we're adding 4. So how do I get rid of adding 4? Well, I need to subtract 4. All right. I'm not changing this plus 4 to a minus 4. No, I am choosing to include a minus 4. Well, what happens if you add 4 to something and then you go ahead and subtract 4? Well, by doing that, ladies and gentlemen, you are essentially canceling. 4 minus 4 is 0. By doing that, now x is by itself, x is now isolated, and that's great. We have successfully isolated the variable, but we have a problem. Because remember that this is a scale, this is a balance. And what happens to a scale or a balance if you suddenly take away something from one side? So in this case, I took away 4, so it's going to get lighter, so the scale is going to tip over. It is no longer equal. In order for it to remain equal, ladies and gentlemen, you have to balance the equation. You have to balance the scale. And that brings us to this part down here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the golden rule of math. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other. So in this case, I subtracted 4 from this side so that I could isolate the variable. I subtracted 4 because that is the inverse of adding 4. Good, that isolates the variable, but whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So 7 minus 4, now I can actually work that out. That will give me 3. So x has to equal 3. Notice, ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly, that's true. If I replace the x with a 3, is 4 plus 3 equal to 7? Of course. So notice, you might be like, well, yeah, Mr. Lugo, but couldn't I have just done that in my head? Of course, but this process works for even much harder problems, which I will be showing you later. But for now, let me just recap the entire process. So if you got anything from this video, it should be this. Let's work down here. So we have 4 plus x, which is the same thing as x plus 4. So we have 4 plus x is equal to 7. We can see that to solve this, we need to isolate the variable. The variable is right here on the left side of the equation. So I'm going to focus here on the left side of the equation. So why is the x not isolated? The reason why it's not isolated is because I'm adding 4 to it. Okay, it's not just x by itself, it's x plus 4. All right, so notice that I rewrote it down here. So we have x plus 4. I need to get rid of this plus 4. So how am I going to get rid of adding 4? I'm going to use the inverse operation. All right, what's the inverse? What's the opposite of adding 4? I'm going to subtract 4. Good. If I have plus 4 and then I subtract 4 from that, that cancels. That's 0. 0 plus x is x. X is now isolated. However, whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So notice that the equal sign just comes straight down, and I just wrote a minus 4 on this side. So now I can actually work that out. I need to work out 7 minus 4. 7 minus 4 is 3. So ladies and gentlemen, x has to equal 3. Now, in order to check this, I'm just going to take that 3 and put it back into the equation. Instead of x, I'm going to put a 3. Is 4 plus 3 equal to 7? It is indeed equal to 7. So ladies and gentlemen, this equation is balanced. That is a true statement. X is indeed equal to 3. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you found this video helpful. Again, I'm going to show you in a different video some more complicated problems. But remember, again, it is not about finding the answer for these simple problems. It is about learning the process that you'll be able to apply to any problem, regardless of how hard it is. So again, ladies and gentlemen, with that in mind, I will see you next time.